Hello. Welcome to Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church in Pasadena. Welcome to all members, friends, and guests, here in person and virtually. My name is Taylor Chazen, and I am a member of your Board of Trustees. Neighborhood Church creates and grows an inclusive community of faith connected by love, spirit, and service. We acknowledge our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples, the traditional caretakers of the lands and waters of this campus. With respect for the rights and wisdom of Indigenous people, we acknowledge our harmful colonial histories and commit to decolonizing our own practices, to learning new ways of being in community and with each other, in good relationship with the Indigenous people of this land and with the land itself. Today's service is led by our guest seminarian, Nicholas D'Augusto, with music led by Neighborhood Bell Choir Director F. Thomas Simpson and Associate Music Director Wells Lang, featuring the Neighborhood Bell Choir. Please take a moment to silence your devices as we begin our service. Thank you for joining us as we continue to prioritize connection over perfection in this hybrid service, which is streamed and recorded on YouTube. Families with young children are welcome in the sanctuary or the narthex. The pledge drive is live, as you all know. And if you don't, then now you do. And I know that I am in. After only 1 week, we've met almost 50% of our pledge goal so far. But we've only heard from just about 35% of our families, couples, and individual members. So we still have lots of you to hear from, which is very exciting, because over 50% and only heard from 35%, the math is good. Math is good. We do hope that you'll take this time to reflect on what keeps you inspired, involved, and invested here at Neighborhood. Please pledge generously and learn more after service on the patio about how pledging is a vital part of sustaining and growing our church. You can always get more information on this and all the groups and activities that make Neighborhood community in our newsletter. If you are visiting and would like to find out how you can get involved and sign up for a newsletter, please stop by the welcome table outside. Our order of service and more extensive announcements are available as a link in the Sunday email, posted in the narthex, or through the QR code on the back of your hymnal. Again, welcome to Neighborhood Church, whoever you are and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. Welcome to this inclusive faith community connected by love, spirit, and service. And now I would like to welcome Erin Workup for a pledge testimonial on why she's in.
Good morning. My name is Erin Work, and I was born into Neighborhood Church. I was dedicated here as a baby, and some of my earliest memories were in the RE classrooms and climbing trees around campus. I went through the full spiritual exploration curriculum from neighboring faiths and ROP to OWL and senior high youth group, which I think all sort of culminated in my current graduate program studying social work and public health as well. As a young person, being part of this community had a really profound effect on me. I felt surrounded by trusted community, both adults and peers. I felt that Neighborhood valued and encouraged my autonomy and my sense of justice and compassion as I found my place in this world. As I got older too, I found that the sermons that I found very long and boring as a child actually gave me a really invaluable space to reflect and ground myself. Neighborhood has always been a really safe, nurturing, and loving space for me. When I graduated high school, I moved across the country to Vermont, but following Lauren Worley's very sage advice to do something you every week, I continued going to churches, Unitarian churches, and attended several churches around New England for about 8 years while I was not in California. At these churches, I found kindness, community, and connection. But when I came home and visited Neighborhood on breaks and holidays, it always just felt right, like being home. So when I decided to move back to Los Angeles last fall, Neighborhood was a huge draw. It was really wonderful to move to a new-ish to me city and immediately have community. The young adult group offered me a space to meet new friends and also to reconnect with many other young adults that have found their way back to neighborhood. It's not surprising, but I think pretty impressive how many of us are still active in this community as adults. Despite how I've changed and how the church has evolved, neighborhood is a constant in my life. So even though I did sign the membership book when I was 13, I have been a pledging member of neighborhood for the last 2 years. And despite tight finances as a grad student, supporting this community is a priority. In fact, this year I upped my pledge. So I am in, and I hope you are too.
Good morning. My name is Nicholas D'Augusto. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a white, cis-het, endosex male with brown hair and brown eyes. I'm 6'1", slender, and I'm wearing a blue sport coat, white shirt, green pants. I'm a UU seminarian student, but I'm also a member here at Neighborhood, and I pledge. We pledge, my wife is here, we pledge. And I want to thank Reverend Omega for giving me the opportunity to lead this service with you all today. Today is Palm Sunday, which is the Christian holiday celebrating when Jesus triumphantly appeared in Jerusalem riding a young donkey as his followers lovingly waved palm fronds around him. What makes this very humble appearance triumphant is that this is the inciting act that begins the domino effect which will lead to Jesus' ultimate crucifixion, death, and resurrection. The celebratory spirit of this moment is primarily defined through the Gospel of John. Although all four Gospels mention Jesus riding a donkey into Jerusalem, it is only in John where we find celebratory palm fronds being waved, which can be found in other celebrations of victory in prior Hebrew texts. And only in John where Jesus' death is so integrally tied to the core of his saving ministry and mission on earth. What I'd like us to focus on right now, though, is the moment before Jesus' appearance in Jerusalem. In the days leading up to this moment, Jesus is in hiding. He knows that if he continues to follow his moral compass and convictions, he will pay the ultimate price for it. And yet, amazingly, he carries on. The theme of today's service is centered around a sermon I wrote for my Hebrew Scriptures class. And on this special Christian holiday, I'd like us to celebrate Jesus' Jewish nature in the Hebrew scriptural world in which he worked, as well as reflect on this question: how can we be present in loving our life and our world exquisitely, and at the same time be present and at peace with knowing it will end? It's a pleasure to be with you today. Welcome to worship.
Good morning. Please stand if you are able, and as you are able, and we will sing hymn 301, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky.
Our faith acquiesced to Hi there. I'm Matt Vasco, your Director of Spiritual Exploration. It's a joy to be with you all this morning. So we've got our bells set up in front, but I do see some extra chairs in the first row, maybe the first 3 rows here. So if any children are sitting in the back where it's going to be hard to see the pictures, you might want to come up and fill in the empty spaces in the front. Just want to invite you to do that so that you can see. Thank you. Good job. So, yeah, sure, come on up. So, Nicholas gave us this. Well, who is this joining us? Welcome, Reverend Omega. Nicholas gave such a wonderful opening words about Palm Sunday. And kids, do we know what Sunday comes after Palm Sunday? What Sunday is that? Easter! Very good. You didn't get any hints or anything. Yeah, Easter Sunday is next Sunday. We're going to have just one service at 10 a.m., followed by a massive Easter egg hunt on the lawn. So kids, drag your parents here. Easter egg hunt after service next Sunday. So Jesus' message was all about love. And so I brought a book about love and transformation because our March theme is transformation. So watch for the messages of love and transformation in our book, The Boy with Flowers in His Hair by Jarvis, like Cher, one name. Jarvis, the author. His name is David. He's the boy with flowers in his hair, and he's my best friend. Everybody likes David, even Mrs. Jones, and flowers make her sneeze. He's sweet and gentle, just like his petals. We have the best time together, finding the good puddles. Doesn't everybody love doing that? Making up songs and running from bees. Once he had a family of birds living in his hair for a whole month. It was really funny. But one day, something happened. I was watering David's hair, and one of his petals came off in my hand. Uh-oh. That afternoon, he didn't want to play. The next day, he started wearing a hat. David never wore hats. He was quiet. David was never quiet. Mrs. Jones asked us to take off our coats and hats and scarves. When David took off his, petals fluttered down like butterflies. David was twiggy, spiky, and brittle. Everyone stayed away in case they got hurt by his branches. I got a few scratches, but it wasn't David's fault. Then I had an idea. I asked Mrs. Jones for a paintbrush and some scissors, and I found a way to give David some color. I made new flowers for David all the time. Everybody wanted to help. David seemed back to how he was before, almost. Then, one day, I noticed a different flower in David's hair. It wasn't one of mine. It wasn't one of anyone's. It was David's. It was a real flower, a new flower, prettier than ever.
Which one is it?
It's that one right there with the green stem. Yeah. More and more of David's own flowers started to bloom, and soon enough, all those buzzy bees were back. So, right now, David has lots and lots of flowers in his hair, but I'm making sure I still have lots of paper ones just in case he ever needs them. Because he's my best friend and I am his. The end. Now let's sing all of our children and youth out to their spiritual exploration classes.
I love that song. Each Sunday, our congregation dedicates 100% of its contributions to 501c3 organizations or neighborhood church-based social justice activities that are making a difference in our community and the world. Each selected guest organization aligns with our community's mission and values and is nominated by church members who often are longtime volunteers and supporters of these change-making organizations. In addition to placing your donation in the plate, online giving is available using the QR code on the donation box just outside the sanctuary or by using the text instructions shown on the screen. If you wish to make a payment toward your pledge or contribute to church operations, make a note in the subject line or use an envelope available at the donation box. This week, our gifts will be going to support Making Housing and Community Happen. And here to tell us more is our guest, Dr. Jill Shook, co-founding director.
Excuse me. What a blessing to be here. This is so exciting. I really appreciate the introduction. This is a very special day for me. In two ways. This is the day I met my husband 13 years ago, and it's also the same day that we celebrated together and continue to celebrate this Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday we consider as a peace demonstration as Jesus came into Jerusalem and they declared him the Prince of Peace. And so my husband's a Quaker, and we've been in plenty of peace demonstrations, believe me. So it's a special joy to be here, especially today with you. So thank you for inviting our organization, Making Housing and Community Happen. Last week, you heard from Bert Newton, who's on our staff, and today you get me, Jill Shook, the co-founding director. So we've been doing housing justice work here in Pasadena and beyond for 24 years. We formalized as a nonprofit in 2018. We do know what ends homelessness. It took a long time to figure this out, and it's homes. And so it's homes that people can, homes that they can afford with the support around it, the supportive services. So this kind of housing is called permanent supportive housing. And the really amazing news is that it's 90% retention rate. So we've, another amazing news is that we've been a catalyst in making sure this kind of housing has been built here in Pasadena. And that has helped lower our homeless count by over 50% here in Pasadena. It's really good news. It used to be close to 1,000, now it's closer to 500, so we have a long ways to go. But your partnership and your love with us is so important in making this happen. We have 4 teams that I'm going to quickly tell you about. Our first team has been started in 2015. We have hired organizers, conducted 1,000 household surveys, done, I feel like, an excellent job of listening to what was a historic, thriving African-American business district on North Fair Oaks, and be able to help hear what it is that community wants, working with and by the community, with and for and with the community. And so this is the area on Fair Oaks from Washington north to the city border. What we've learned, the city, that community wants to slow traffic. They want to restore businesses, provide affordable housing, and beautify the area with murals, and we're doing all of that. It's part of a plan, a beautiful vision plan that I have a copy of outside. You're welcome to look at that if you wish. And it has to get approved by the city this year. If not, it'll be status quo and everything the same for the next 20 years. Tom Petersmeyer, it's just been a blessing to know Tom, and he's part of our safe parking team. He's been part of it since its inception. He's been such a blessing traveling to safe parking sites and visiting them in Santa Barbara, San Diego, and Los Angeles. So from him, we have learned best practices and applied those to our local safe parking program, which is hosted by the Trinity Lutheran Church here in Pasadena. We have 8 parking spaces available. We partner with the Foothill Unity Center to do our case management for those parkers. We've seen 8 people housed, thank God. And we presently have 8 more in those spaces waiting to get housed. ASHA stands for Affordable Supportive Housing Advocates, and we do advocacy, making sure good policy and good projects are passed. For example, workforce housing on Pasadena Unified School District campuses. Folks are leaving the coastal areas of our country, moving inland, and so it's leaving a lot of school district sites empty. And so it's a beautiful idea we just got passed at the PUSD board level to provide housing on one of the campuses for faculty and staff. So, yeah. I'm going to give you one more example. Our inclusionary, church is all about inclusion, and we are as well. And so the idea that affordability be included into every single housing development is what we got passed. It's called the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance. And if a development is 10 units or more, today 20% of those have to be affordable. That one policy, just that one policy, has produced over 1,000 units at no cost to the city, and it's put $26 million into our city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That's good policy. That's good policy. I'm going to mention 2 other policies. We were able to help at the state level pass policies to make those granny flats, the ADUs, accessory dwelling units you can have in your backyards, legal. And then we also recently passed another state policy. It took 3 years, but this rezones every church in the state that's interested in providing affordable housing on their underutilized excess land. So that leads to our 4th team, and that's our congregational land team, which supports congregations interested in providing affordable housing. A lot of churches are struggling, and this is a way to make better use of their and be a steward of the land they have. Over 90 churches in Southern California have approached us for our professional services to provide feasibility to those churches to get them ready to partner with a professional affordable housing developer. We've been able to help about 40 churches so far go down this path. Just those 40 churches alone in Southern California will produce over 1,000 affordable units by this summer. Not produce, but have planned to be able to be produced. Years ago, the first Unitarian church in Los Angeles partnered with Mercy Housing, and they built 85 affordable units called the Carolyn Severance Manor. So if you haven't seen that, it's really worth going down there to see what they've done. Others around the U.S. are learning about our work and are now forming teams like ours, and we have an apprenticeship group to equip them to do this kind of work. So now we have teams in Texas, Colorado, Washington, Northern California, and I'm in conversation with potential teams in Virginia and North Carolina. I am amazed. I never dreamed, never in my life did I dream that we would be doing all of this as an organization. The housing crisis is real, it's severe, it's affected probably every person in this room. So we have to work together and do everything we can. So your partnership with us is amazing, and we so appreciate it. It's a thrill to serve in this way and to partner with you. Thank you.
May the volunteers come forward with the plates. Thank you for giving generously.
Thank you so much. You are human, not divine. Your task is to live life to its fullest. So listen to me. Take my advice. Enjoy living as if every day were a feast day. Does this quote sound familiar to you? Vaguely, right? Well, here, let me give you another one. At rich men's banquets, after dinner, a man carries round a wooden image of a corpse in a coffin, painted and carved in exact imitation, a cubit or 2 cubits long. This he shows to each of the company, saying, "Drink and make merry, but look on this." Excuse me. "Drink and make merry, but look on this. For such shalt thou be when thou art dead." Okay, one more. "There is nothing worthwhile for a human but to eat and drink and afford themselves enjoyment with their means." All right, enough of the games, Nick. The first excerpt I read for you is from an ancient Egyptian story entitled "A Sufferer and a Soul in Egypt," composed around 1800 BCE. It is one of many examples of ancient Egyptian and thus ancient Near Eastern literature that scholars have rediscovered, translated, and passed down to us today. Here's a short passage from the introduction to that story as found in the book Old Testament Parallels. Around 2100 BCE, the social world of Egypt came apart. Consequently, teachers began to reevaluate Egypt's worldview. A sufferer and a soul files a lawsuit against Egypt for its views on life and death. At the trial, the emotionally distressed sufferer is the attorney for death, and his soul is the attorney for life. The sufferer proposes committing suicide as an antidote to the pain and failure of his life. The soul argues that it is the task of the living to get on with life, and that funerals are a waste of time for rich and poor alike. The soul proposes that the sufferer stop complaining and start enjoying life. A sufferer and a soul does not offer explanations for suffering. It simply wonders what the suffering should do. The second excerpt I read for you about the drinking party and the coffin with the face of the dead person on it is a story relayed to us firsthand by the renowned ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who was traveling in Egypt during the 5th century BCE. So here we have an ancient Egyptian philosophical through line, stretching from 1800 BCE all the way to around 400 BCE, that centers the reader's attention on the inexplicability of what it means to be alive, the inevitability of death, and the fact that humans can't do much about any of it besides committing themselves to enjoy living as if every day were a feast day. The third excerpt I read for you is from a book in the Hebrew Scriptures. In Hebrew, the book is titled Koheleth. Many of you are probably more familiar with the Old Testament name for the book as I was, which goes by the Greek translation Ecclesiastes. This book was composed somewhere around 400 to 300 BCE, so about the same time Herodotus was getting hammered with rich Egyptians and hanging out with coffins that had pictures of dead people on them. I look forward to sharing my sermon on Koheleth with you in just a bit. I was raised Roman Catholic, educated in private Catholic schools my entire life, and I knew basically nothing about the book of Ecclesiastes. Who wrote it, when it was written, what its message was. Was it one of Paul's epistles? Paul's letter to the Ecclesiastes? I know now that Ecclesiastes is an Israelite book that synthesizes ancient Mesopotamian human wisdom. I also think it's one of the most approachable and empathic books in the entire Bible. First, I have to say, I prefer the Hebrew name for this book, Koheleth. Maybe it's because it sounds vaguely Tolkien-y, you know, from Lord of the Rings. Mithrandir and Thranduil from the land of Koheleth. It also has a Shakespearean loftiness to it. He arrived at the house of Koheleth, smelleth the meal, then felleth upon the table. I leave it up to you to decide what the meal smelled like, whether it was rancid or delicious. Also, I'm pretty sure Shakespeare never used the word smelleth. Koheleth. Koheleth is a man, a wealthy man, gathering experiential knowledge of the living world in the hopes of finding the source of wisdom. And in this very practical, earthly pursuit of wisdom, Koheleth turns up many of the same hard-to-accept answers that his Egyptian forebears did, which I read to you earlier in today's service. Life is unfair. Doing good does not necessarily mean you will be rewarded. Doing bad does not necessarily mean you will be punished. One of the only things within our control is whether or not we have the capacity to celebrate the living of our lives amidst all of this unfairness, wickedness, and injustice. Can we eat and drink and find joy in a life of toil, hardship, and often meager means? After all of his searching, through his extraordinary pessimism, candidness, and doubt, Koheleth determines that eating and drinking and living joyfully is not only the essence of what it means to be alive, but the best way to please an incomprehensible God. Koheleth, chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Utter futility, said Koheleth. Utter futility. All is futile. What real value is there for a human in all the gains they make beneath the sun? One generation goes, another comes, but the earth remains the same forever. Just as the Egyptian society of 2100 BCE was in a state of turmoil, flux, and cultural self-reflection, so too was Israelite society at the time Koheleth was composed. In 586 BCE, after years of internal strife amidst a divided kingdom, Jerusalem was invaded, conquered, and destroyed by the Babylonian army. The temple in which the Israelites believed their God physically resided was completely demolished. The Babylonians, in an attempt to quell any future rebellions and incorporate their subjugated populations into their empire, exiled many of the Israelites to Babylon. However, in 539 BCE, only about 45 years later, King Cyrus and the Persians conquered the kingdom of Babylon and instituted a sweeping new political and cultural framework for the region. With keen diplomatic savvy, the Persian monarchy incentivized the previously exiled peoples of Babylonia to return to their original lands and rebuild their communities, with the promise that the Persian monarchy would allow them to live and worship as they chose, as long as they respected Persian authority, and this the Israelites did. They returned to the land of Judah and began rebuilding what would be called the Second Temple in Jerusalem. But they would now be without their own king. The Israelites would now be vassals to the Persian Empire. But they were vassals allowed to worship and live as they saw fit. This is what is referred to as the post-exilic era of Israelite history, life after the exile in Babylon. Israelites have returned to their homeland, but shifting theological ideas would arise out of the trauma of their previous devastation and loss. One of these new theological ideas would be expressed in the book of Koheleth: disillusionment. Prior to this time period, ancient Near Eastern gods were local gods with tangible and practical benefits. You prayed to them with a problem, they came to help you fix it. And your God moved with you. Yes, wherever you went, you would worship the new local God, but you could also worship your previous gods. This is all over the Hebrew Scriptures. The Israelites, who we now know were an ethnic offshoot of Canaanites, are repeatedly caught worshiping the old Canaanite gods, even though the Jewish leaders are desperately demanding that the Israelites worship the God of Israel exclusively. So, exclusive monotheism, where you don't even allow the idea that other gods exist, that doesn't emerge until later in history. At this point, everybody just sort of believed their God was going to be the strongest and would beat the other gods. Israelites worshiped the God of Israel, and they believed he would never be defeated and he would never abandon them. But then they were defeated. Crushed, in fact. And what kind of God would allow their own house to be destroyed? We had been following God's laws faithfully. I thought if we followed God's laws faithfully, that he would always protect us. Why didn't he protect us? Does it even matter if we follow his laws? Koheleth, chapter 6, verses 10 through 12. Whatever happens, it was designated long ago, and it was known that it would happen. As for the human, they cannot contend with what is stronger than them. Often much talk means much futility. How does it benefit a person? Who can possibly know what is best for a person to do in life, the few days of their fleeting life? For who can tell them what the future holds for them under the sun? This book is complicated theologically. It laments the futility in trying to understand human life, the futility in trying to understand God. It rejects over and over again the idea that if a person lives a righteous life, that God will bless that person. Koheleth is looking around everywhere, desperate to find a trustworthy source for wisdom so that he can understand the meaning of life. Embedded in this pursuit is the uncomfortable fact that Koheleth doesn't believe that the God of Israel is the answer. Koheleth, chapter 7, verse 2. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting, for that is the end of every person, and a living one should take it to heart. One of the most ancient practices we have as humans for living in and celebrating the present moment is the practice of meditating daily upon our own inevitable death. As I mentioned, it's been an ancient part of our human ritual since at least as far back as the Egyptians, but it's possible and probable that this type of sentiment could have been a part of human oral tradition long before the advent of writing in the 3000s BCE, as humans had been farming the land and civilizing themselves in ever-growing scales as far back as the year 10,000 BCE. I was introduced to this idea through the Catholic tradition, where it goes by the Latin name memento mori, which translates into English as remember you must die. The point of this reminder isn't to be morbid or promote fear, but to inspire, motivate, and clarify a person's living present. As Socrates was recounted as saying in Plato's Phaedo, which, like Koheleth, was written around 400 BCE, the one aim of those who practice philosophy in the proper manner is to practice for dying and death. Koheleth, the Egyptians, and Socrates stand as antecedents to the idea of memento mori, an idea that further blossomed in the fertile philosophical ground of Rome during the age of the Stoics, and later found a natural fit in the Roman Catholic Christian tradition, which would have both intuitively understood Roman philosophy and also revered Ecclesiastes as sacred scripture. And just as an interesting anecdote, there is a crypt underneath a church in Rome, which includes 6 chapels, 5 of which are covered in the skeletal remains of former monks. The crypt was built in the 1630s, and an estimated 4,000 skeletons from the Middle Ages decorate the insides of the various chapels. And a plaque in one display in the crypt reads, "What you are now, we once were. What we are now, you shall be." Yeah, I love that. Though Koheleth was not so explicit in his recommendations on how to incorporate the daily reminders of death into a person's life, it is clear that Koheleth calls us to forego temptations that blind us from seeing our reality as it truly is. In fact, what Koheleth is calling us to do seems almost contradictory. Drink and be merry on the one hand, on the other, be sure to hang out with people who are grieving. I think these are 2 truths that he's calling us to hold in tension together. Death is terrible, but it happens to all of us. Life is incomprehensible, but we have to celebrate it nonetheless. Koheleth isn't saying don't throw a party. He's saying don't go too far. Don't forget how fragile life really is. Bring food and drink and mirth to those in your life who need it. Don't look away. Be present with the people in your life who are mourning. The fact is, you'll probably be doing the same thing very soon. Koheleth, chapter 7, verses 23 through 26. All this I tested with wisdom. I thought I could fathom it, but it eludes me. The secret of what happens is elusive and deep, deep down. Who can discover it? I put my mind to studying, exploring, and seeking wisdom and the reason of things, and to studying wickedness, stupidity, madness, and folly. Now I find woman more bitter than death. She is all traps. Her hands are fetters, and her heart is snares. He who is pleasing to God escapes her, and he who is displeasing is caught by her. Ah! Ah! Well, that's problematic. I raised up this quote simply to remind everyone that this book is not perfect. Once again, we see the repulsive misogyny that exists in not only the Bible, but most ancient scriptures throughout the world. Most cultures in the world are the offspring of undeniably patriarchal systems of societal governance in which the oppression of women was commonplace. The writing in Koheleth is also pre-scientific. For example, there's a quote where he mocks humans who trust too much in the value of reason. He's making a point when he's talking about that, but I mean, Koheleth had no clue we would attain the kind of post-Enlightenment knowledge we all take for granted today. We know way more about the world than he could have ever dreamed of knowing. And finally, Koheleth isn't really taking into account the benefits his privilege affords him. Yes, at a certain point, money and other riches don't bring a person a higher level of happiness or wisdom. Modern studies have proved this, but we also know today that there is a very large discrepancy between the quality of life of those who live below the poverty line and those of us who live above it. Koheleth isn't recognizing his status in society when he just brushes aside the value of wealth. Even just having the opportunity in life to engage in a fruitless pursuit of wisdom is a privilege of those of us who have the means to afford it. So, those of you who want to pick up this book will find a few things in it that will be offensive to our liberal religious ears. But if you do read it, please remember that this book is a product of its time. We can take what we want from it and throw out the sections that no longer serve us or make sense. For instance, I've been changing all the pronouns to be inclusive. Some people might disagree with that, and as a member of a pluralistic faith, I am called to hold that fact in tension with my UU principles on the matter. Koheleth, chapter 9, verses 7 through 10. Go, eat your bread in gladness, and drink your wine in joy, for your action was long ago approved by God. Let your clothes always be freshly washed, and your head never lack ointment. Enjoy happiness with a partner you love all the fleeting days of life that have been granted to you under the sun, all your fleeting days. For that alone is what you can get out of life and out of the means you acquire under the sun. Whatever it is in your power to do, do with all your might. In 2012, I met the woman who would become my wife, and that began the most joyful, celebratory, and lucrative 6 years of my life. Our love blossomed. We got married in 2015, bought our house in the summer of 2016, and had our son a few months later. I was working a bunch as an actor. Even the immediate future felt like it promised exponential growth. When the best job of my career concluded in 2018, I thought it was the beginning of my next great acting chapter and journey. I was not prepared for what came in its place. Years of unemployment, a psychological and emotional freefall, and a total rupture in my sense of self-identity. I mention this only to state that I am grateful for what life has brought me under the sun. The many incomprehensible, unpredictable things I have received under this sun. I was living in a cloak of privilege, and I did not truly understand at the very depth of my being how great my fortune was, how great my life was and is under this sun. All of this self-realization, this genuine transformative change, was a result of many unwanted things I received from this elusive universe. Things I fought against for many days and months and years with utter futility. Koheleth speaks to me. At the end of a hard day, and with the approach of a tomorrow that may not seem to hold hopes of anything better, we are called by the Spirit of life to sit, to drink something, to eat something, and celebrate at the very least that we are alive, that we can taste some goodness in the world and feel the good effects of a refreshing drink, a full belly, and the nearby laugh of a loved one. Koheleth, chapter 11, verses 7 and 8. How sweet is the light. What a delight it is for the eyes to behold the sun. Even if a person lives many years, let them enjoy themselves in all of them. We are alive today. We may very well be living in a time not unlike the ancient Egypt or ancient Israel mentioned earlier, a time of disillusionment. For the Jewish people, the Palestinian people, their region, and their diasporas, it is once again a time of destruction and horror. For all of us, it is a serious time, a time of great flux and recalibration. But there's coffee outside, and there are cookies, and it's Los Angeles, the sun is shining. Let's stand under the sun together, feel the rays on our skin. We can think about futility, how maddening it can be, and at the same time, how its limits can help us turn and find a new direction. Or maybe you just want to drink the coffee, eat the cookies, feel the sun. That's fine too. It's your moment.
Our concluding hymn is number 281, O God, our help in ages past. Please stand in spirit or mind as you are able.
The following are excerpts from the Blessing for Presence by John O'Donohue. Awaken to the mystery of being here and enter the quiet immensity of your own presence. Have joy and peace in the temple of your senses. Take time to celebrate the quiet miracles that seek no attention. May you experience each day as a sacred gift woven around the heart of wonder. you.